Are you having trouble figuring out how to set a selling price in your business? Maybe that's because you don't know how to calculate the cost. Either way, I'm going to help you with both in the content that's about to be presented to you. It was recorded as part of our Heat Press for Profit live virtual event in January 2021. After you watch this content, you're going to become an expert about generating profit in your business. Enjoy.
Welcome to the last class of the day in our Heat Press for Profit live virtual event. I hope you're having as much fun as I'm having watching all of these great presentations. I can't express my thank you enough to our team who really put a ton of preparation into this to be able to educate you guys to make you successful in your business. Hard to believe this is only day one of a 3-day event. All of these classes have been recorded, and you can go back under the agenda link and you can click on each class that has already been completed in the agenda, and you can click through and watch those. Certainly some great comments in there, some great conversations, and we appreciate the questions coming in live. So please do keep planning to attend these live, especially our show and sell series that's happening tomorrow. So I have, nearly 1,000 people registered for this topic. So it's fair to say that we have lots of people that want to understand how to calculate cost and how to set selling prices in their business. I know we got a ton of newbies, but I've also recognized some names that have registered, and you guys are experienced users as well. And I think it's always great to study up on this subject. It's one of my favorite subjects is numbers and talking about math and the process, and most importantly, profit, right? We have the tagline for the event. The name of it is Heat Press for Profit. That profit should be underlined, circled, starred, highlighted, whatever you want to do. That's an important element of the business to keep you in business. A little bit of housekeeping up front is we have an hour for this session. The way our platform works, it'll let me run 10 minutes over if I need to. So if there are questions coming in and I'll stay a little bit over, we'll use every possible minute up to make sure that we're helping you in your business. We'll try to keep this math high energy to keep you interested and awake and exciting. Please do chat your comments in through the Pathable platform if you can. I know that many of you are watching just within Zoom. You've kind of popped that out. That's fine. But if you could do me a favor, if you're able to, and post your comments in the other comment stream, that will allow us to manage one place, and I'll be able to look at that and chime in with these questions. So we got folks from New York. We got folks from Florida. I got folks from overseas. It should be a good time here together. And today we're going to talk all about calculating costs and setting selling prices. So without further ado, let me share my screen here. And as I jump through, the first thing that we want to talk about is really the cost element. So when I think about this topic, calculating cost is the foundation, right? There's no way you can even think about setting a selling price other than just guessing a price based on what your competition is doing. You can't really have a great indication on whether you can be profitable and sustainable as a business, and even form a strategy and talk about what to focus on if you don't understand what something costs to make. And believe it or not, I've given this, not this exact presentation, but presentations like this, where we dive into calculating costs many times over my 20 years in the industry, a lot of times live. And I'll ask with a show of hands, how many people are calculating labor as part of your cost? How many people are calculating overhead as part of your cost? It can be confusing. And so this is the beginner's guide. So I'm going to start at the basics. We're going to build up. We're going to get into a bit of intermediate content, I would say, for sure. But certainly a topic that should be understood and digestible by any business owner at this point. So this is the cost equation. Certainly you can download this PowerPoint. I like saying write it down because things stick with me when I write them down. I tend to retain them better, even if I can download the presentation later. So if you have a notebook beside you, an ink pen, a calculator would be really helpful for this class so these concepts can stick with you. It's a work session, right? It's not just me talking at you. Work at it with me here. So if I wanted to build a house, there are certain expenses that go into building the house. Just like building a house, if I wanted to make a t-shirt or a sweatshirt like the one I'm wearing, there are certain expenses that go in. I like giving the analogy of a house because we've all probably had some work done on our house at some point in time. And we know that it takes a person to complete that work, right? It's not just something that's automated, just like making a t-shirt isn't fully automated. There usually is some element of labor that goes in to building that particular house. And so the equation for calculating costs is this. It's direct labor and materials plus overhead equals total costs. So we need to account for in our cost calculation direct labor, the materials that it takes to produce something, obviously the lumber, if we're building a house, the nails, anything like that that would go into constructing a house, but also the overhead that it takes to do that as the construction company or the business. So in an apparel decorating business, these same things are true. We need to figure out what that direct labor and materials cost us when we're building a shirt. We need to figure out what the overhead is for our business to get to total cost. Good news. I'm going to walk you through all of those in a very step-by-step way so you can understand exactly how to calculate this at the end of our first half of this session. Okay, so here's what I like to say about direct labor and materials. Now you can fill out the poll questions at launch when you came into the event. Just click on the little polls link and you can answer those for me, and you guys can all see the results so we know a good cross section of our audience today, the averages of whether you guys are paying yourself or not. But I love this comment. If you're working for free, guess what? We're hiring, right? So if you guys want to volunteer your time, we're hiring. Come on over and work for Stahls. If we don't have to pay you a nickel, that's phenomenal. And so this obviously is a little bit of an exaggeration to get a point to stick that a lot of people that do apparel decoration simply do not account for their time as part of the process. And when you don't account for your time, you're never going to be able to, one, realize the revenue that you possibly could in the business, or two, and I think most importantly for a small business, if you're a beginner, is replace yourself, right? As a solopreneur, right? If you're just the single owner operator of the business, odds are you're getting some friends and family to help. They won't help too much unless you start actually paying them for their work. And so it's good to build in a pay plan for every particular task that falls into manufacturing the good. So when we talk about direct labor, this is the component of the labor that actually goes into making the thing that we're building, okay? This is the heat press operation if we're pressing a transfer onto the shirt. This is the time that it takes to weed the graphic if we've cut it on a vinyl cutter. Every task that you can track into the actual manufacturing of the good should be under the category of direct labor. And it's a pretty easy calculation that I'm going to walk you through here in a second. Also, I want to point out, it's not just cost of the transfer or cost of the t-shirt or whatever it might be, it's the landed cost. And so we need to make sure we account for that inbound freight expense into our total cost, because otherwise we can see a lot of revenue flow out the door on freight, and then we wonder why we don't have as much money in our bank account as we expected at the end of a given period of time. And so here we go. And again, you can go into the file section through our platform, and you can download this presentation, or you can jot these down. And so I'm going to walk you very step by step through this calculation. And so in order to calculate the direct labor that it takes to make a t-shirt, you need to know how many minutes that t-shirt takes to complete. A typical t-shirt should not take hours to complete. If it's taking you hours, you may need to look at another technology or another transfer type or whatever. It should be fairly simple, and you should be printing shirts in a matter of minutes and sometimes seconds. And when I talk about this isn't just the time it takes for the heat press to lock down. This is the time that it takes to stage the shirts, get the shirts loaded onto the press, preheat, which is critically important, position the transfer, lock the press down, peel the transfer at the end, remove the shirt from the press, fold the shirt, put the shirt in the box. You get it, right? It's everything from A to Z in the heat press process that goes into actually making the good that you need to consider in this calculation. So how long does it take you on average to make a shirt? This may not be a question that you can answer today, but if you're experienced, you probably can get a good gauge of it. We look at a transfer that takes 4 to 6 seconds to apply, or let's just say worst case, 30 seconds to apply, and that's super long for any transfer. We look at the time to load a shirt and go through all those steps. Most people are going to decorate a shirt, as long as it's not super complicated with layers and placements, in 2 minutes or less. And what we want to do is we want to be able to just ballpark that minutes per shirt to come up with a quick cost calculation and multiply that of our cost for that labor, how much we're paying that operator per minute. So the sample that you see in that top box here on the screen is you see 2 minutes per shirt. Let's say we're paying the employee that's doing the manufacturing job $10 per hour. Take that $10 per hour, divide it by 60 minutes, and we get our roughly 17 cents per minute. Now, it's up to you how you want to account for it, and I'm certainly not an accountant, so I would suggest you consult with your business accountant, and you have one of those if you're really serious about this. But think about the all-in cost for that employee. Sometimes it's just not the labor per hour. Sometimes there's benefits and other things on what that employee is going to cost you per hour, but consider that all in. There is a question in the poll on how much you pay your heat press operator. If you feel comfortable sharing that answer with us, I put some ranges out there, or how much you pay yourself to do the job. Complete that, and that'll help us get an industry average so we can all kind of bookmark that, or I should say benchmark that, and have that for future reference. So for our equation today, $10 per hour for sake of argument. Ultimately, to make that shirt, I have about 33 cents in labor. What that does is not only does it give you the cost, it forces you as a business to think about the manufacturing processes that you bring in-house. What do I mean? I mean, certainly you can buy a roll of heat transfer vinyl, and I think in a lot of cases you should. You could cut this roll of heat transfer vinyl on your vinyl cutter, which I have here in my home studio, and you can weed it, and that'll take a certain amount of time. For anybody that's completed this process, you know that weeding is either therapeutic for some people or it's a nightmare. But either way, it takes time and it takes money. And so you'll be able to reason through jobs when you start to calculate how many minutes it takes to complete every step in the process and think, would I be better to outsource this component and let Stahls cut it for me, or order a transfer from Transfer Express? These are all important things to consider. But either way, you get a direct labor calculation to complete the shirt. Make sense? Hopefully you guys can understand that. I also want to say, if it's taking you longer, I got some comments. Therapeutic from Cheryl. Ronnie says, takes longer than 2 minutes. Laugh out loud. Certainly to weed, it takes longer than 2 minutes. The example I'm giving you here, the image you're seeing on the screen, is one of our digital screen printed transfers. This is the Ultra Color product you may have learned about today from Transfer Express. Certainly shouldn't take more than 2 minutes to lock the press down. It's about a 15-second dwell time, and you just cold peel it. And so obviously we're not sitting there waiting minutes and minutes for it to cool. We're moving on to the next shirt if we're doing a job. So anyways, we have our direct labor calculation. If there are any questions on the direct labor component, feel free to chat those in. I think that one's pretty straightforward. The moral of the story here is pay yourself if you hope to replace yourself, and make sure that you are accounting for this in your overall cost calculation. Next is landed cost of material. So in here, we have the garment with freight, and we also have the heat transfer with freight. And so in this particular case, I wanted to model this out at 50 shirts that were done for this Shamrock and Shenanigans pub crawl event as a concept. And at the 50 shirts, the transfer is costing me, sorry, let me start with the shirts. The blank shirt for a t-shirt of that style is costing me about $1.98 each. Cost me ballpark $15 in freight. So I do the math to create a total. $1.98 times 50, add the $15 in freight, and ultimately that shirt cost me about $2.28 a piece landed. Figure out if you can find a blank apparel supplier where you can get free inbound freight over a certain amount, and then start to try to reduce your freight costs by grouping up orders and just ordering intelligently for all of your jobs. And you can control that through the turn times you quote and how you structure that in your business. But think about all these components. It'll make you more competitive and more profitable. And then the transfers. And so in this case, a full color transfer, you can see, I don't know, there's 6 or 7 colors in that design. Certainly not something that's easy to execute with heat transfer vinyl. So we're going to order a digital screen printed transfer, an ultra color transfer. And as we see in this particular case, it's costing about $3.15 for a transfer. I have $12 in freight to get those to me, so it cost about $3.39. Overall, you add those two numbers, and I know my landed cost of materials for this job is $5.67. Now, I will say a lot of people get that right. They know how much the transfer costs. They know how much the shirt costs. They add those together, and then they go, how much did it take me to make? And then they ballpark it from there. And so if you're getting factual about that information, we have $6 in our first column in our direct labor and materials. Vicki, can you just give me a verbal cue that we're still live? I kind of lost the chat, so I want to make sure the whole session didn't drop for everybody.
Yeah, no, we're good. It just had to refresh. For the same thing happened to me. I do have a question about the t-shirt that you're using in this example. If you have a specific brand that you were referencing for $1.98.
Okay, I wish I had the style, but what I did is I went on Sanmar last evening, or not last evening, a couple evenings ago, logged in under my account and pulled something in this style with the cap sleeve, and was able to find $1.98 for your standard small to extra large. You add a little bit of cost on 2XL, but establish, if you have a tax ID, establish a wholesale account with Sanmar, SNS Activewear, any of our sponsors, and you'll be able to get those costs, or you can just look straight through Transfer Express and get the costs on their blank apparel offering as well as Stahls. So sorry I can't answer that specifically. I'll come back in the chat and give you the style so you guys can have it for later. Cool. All right. Glad to hear everybody's still here. Thanks for chiming in, friends. All right. Next, overhead. So we got our direct labor. So you're staying with me. That's part one of the equation. If you remember, I told you to write it down. It was the direct labor and materials plus overhead equals total cost. Now, for the amount of people not paying themselves to complete the job, which is a major issue in the industry, I would say there's double that have no clue about overhead in their business. And that's understandable, guys, because it is complicated, but it's really important to the structure of your business and the longevity of your business to include overhead and costs. It's actually a checks and balances sort of approach to make sure you don't swell up and have money going out the door so you can't be competitive in the market. And so I like to say, typically a lease or a building becomes the largest part of overhead for a lot of companies. Sometimes there are other things like your equipment investments and depreciation, but if your building is free, we're moving in. So if you work for free, we're hiring. If your building is free, we're moving in. So there is a cost to all of those decisions that you make. What we call them are indirect costs that fall in this bucket of overhead. So we have direct costs, right? Those are all the manufacturing tasks. And then we have this other bucket that's indirect costs, which we commonly refer to as overhead. So these are expenses such as accounting and legal expenses. If you get that business accountant I'm talking about, these are sometimes front office and administrative salaries, even sales and marketing salaries or funds that are spent. This is depreciation. So if you invest in that, $7,000 heat press, you're going to depreciate that over a number of years and calculate that into the cost of your business. That flows into overhead, how you spend your money. Licenses and government fees, property taxes, rent, utilities. You could probably add to the list. Basically, it's anything that's not direct labor and materials. Every cost in your business needs to be accounted for. Typically, you see most of these indirect costs show up under the overhead calculation. And so when we look at overhead, let me walk you through the calculation on this, and I'm going to look back into some questions. We have in the box, indirect expenses. I'm sorry, let me try that again. Indirect expenses divided by direct expenses. Don't want to get this more complicated than it needs to be. So the sample really makes it clear. So let's say I'm in my home office here. I've set this up over the Christmas and New Year's break as it could be a shop, and I'll be bringing more equipment in tomorrow for my 10 o'clock session. But I have the Hotronix AutoClam. I have the GraphTech 24-inch cutter. I even have a silhouette cutter back there that I've been experimenting with and learning. And I have this space in my house, right? And so I'm going to allocate this space to the business if I'm printing from home. Not only am I going to have this space, I'm going to have the advertising dollars that I'm going to spend online to generate revenue. Perhaps I'm going to pay some commissions to a salesperson to go out and sell jobs for me, because I know as the entrepreneur, I can't wear too many hats. I need to focus on what I'm good at. I'd probably sell, but just for this example. So I add all of these things up in indirect expenses over a given typical period of time. I want you to hear that, typical period of time. And so the longer this period of time can be that you're calculating these expenses and adding them up, the better. But to get started, how about a month? Look back at your expenses for last month, if it's a typical month in the business, or look to this month and start calculating it today and add that up over a period of time. Now, then I want to take my direct expenses over that same period of time. And so that means all of my hourly wages that I paid myself while I'm working and completing jobs. And sometimes you even want to pay yourself when you're not working for that 8-hour shift if you hope to build to that. I also want to include all the shirts that I bought, all the transfers that I bought, all the vinyl I bought, all the freight expense that went into the direct bucket. And so if my indirect expenses were $1,500 for that given period, those are my overhead expenses. My direct expenses were 10 grand, which gives you some idea of the volume you're doing. Basically, I'm going to take the indirect, divide it by the direct, and get a percentage. In this case, the overhead rate is 0.15 or 15%, if that's easier for you to understand. And so I'm trying to get to this calculation. Once I get to this number, I'm going to be able to control this number. If this number starts to get too high, if I get up into 50%, 40% overhead, I know I am way overspending on my on my indirect expenses. It's becoming too much of a percentage of my business. And so you should strive generally to keep that overhead low, or if the overhead's high, you need to make sure whatever you're investing in that category is of critical value to your business, the unique value that you're presenting to your customers. So if it's a retail space, which is tough right now, I understand, but you need to make sure that retail space is working for you in some way. There's no way you want to pay a big bill on anything and not have it working for you to generate revenue in your business, because that'll show up in overhead and it'll lead to being quickly out of business if you don't calculate it in and continue paying it. Okay, so hopefully you guys can understand that. Here now, we've calculated this percent, 15%. Now, to actually get the overhead amount, what we need to do is we take the direct cost for a job. This is down, like, so let me back up. I get the overhead rate for my business. Okay, so that's over the course of the month. Now I know Josh's tease is 15% overhead is the rate for my business for this year. I'm going to revisit it if something radical changes, like I move into a new space or my rent increases or whatever. But I'll lock that in, and I really don't need to do it again unless something radical happens one way or another to my indirect expenses. But once I have that percentage, that's going to be a rate that I apply to every single job that I calculate. And here's how it works. So you see the direct expenses for that shirt that we just built was $6, right? That was the transfer and the shirt and the labor to make that. I'm going to multiply those direct expenses by my 15% number, right? Or 0.15. And that gives me my overhead that I need to build into the cost structure of that job. Does that make sense, guys? So I appreciate a chat that says, I'm with you, Josh. I'm getting it. This makes sense, or I'm lost. And if that's you, give me some specific things and I'll back up. But you can't miss this part, guys. We need to understand the cost calculation piece before we can even think about setting selling prices. So good. I'm glad to see everybody's getting it. So let's look at the equation with those numbers filled in. We have the direct labor and material, $6. I have the overhead on this particular shirt, that Shamrock shirt I built, is 90 cents. My total cost to create that Shamrock t-shirt that we saw, that bright green t-shirt, is $6.90. Okay, so that is a calculation that works. You can trust it. You can do it every time. And yes, for the person that asked it, I will walk you through my cost calculator to show you how you can how this is all built in, and you can calculate costs not only for heat transfer vinyl, but other products very easy. So I'm going to go to that here in a second before I pivot over to selling prices. Okay. William asked a good question. What about shipping costs when we need to send out to customers? And so you can have two ways that you can approach those shipping costs. Usually you should aim for a break even on that freight revenue to freight expense. I think that's a good model, but it depends on how you carve up shipping as a part of the way you do business. And so I've seen shops that try to break even. They literally pass through, here's what it costs me to ship. I'm charging the customer exactly that or as close to that as I possibly can. And that should just net out and really not be a part of the calculation. However, I know a lot of shops that try to limit those extra fees, and they will bundle their outbound freight as part of their cost of the product. So in that case, what it helps to do is get an average outbound freight cost per package. If you have a pretty typical flow of business and you know these are the types of packages we sent, I feel like you can establish some strong averages for shipping rates for t-shirts or whatever you're sending out, and you can calculate that into your total cost. So great question. Either pass it through exact for a break even. Some people will margin up freight and try to make it a revenue source. I've seen that model as well, to keep their selling price really low and margin up freight and hit you with that. Form a strategy and test it. Do some A/B testing of different strategies, especially if you're selling on e-commerce, and see what works for your audience. Okay. Yeah, and the box costs something. The box should go into the direct labor and materials. If you're thinking through that, that goes into actually packaging the product. But I don't like to bring that down to the t-shirt level. You want to include that for the total job, unless you have one box per shirt or one bag per shirt. So, but yeah, make sure you're not losing that. All right. So here's what I want to give you. So here's my 5 keys to a profitable business. Generally speaking, keep overhead as low as possible. This is more critical now than ever. You don't want to have overhead sucking the cash out of your business. It should be producing revenue for you. And so if that overhead percentage starts to inflate, we need to figure out ways to reduce it. There's 2 ways to reduce it. We either cut back on some indirect expense, or we make sure those indirect expenses are drastically increasing sales. So we increase our direct expenses because we've increased our sales through the business. Point number 2, I also want to say start and stay lean. And so this goes along with point number 1 with keeping overhead low, but guys, I get it. And yes, I'm a manager of sales here at Stahls. I want you to buy every single piece of equipment we offer, but I also want to be realistic in this. Okay. A heat press isn't that expensive. So it is a tremendous way to start lean and stay lean. Let's start there. Even with the highest end heat press you can possibly get, I'm telling you, I can outfit you with my optimal package, which if we have time, I'll touch on at the end, for $6,000 or less to be able to produce 99% of probably what you saw today. But once you get going, I've seen this at trade shows. People want the embroidery machine. Oh, I'm financing it. So let's throw a direct to garment printer on there, and let's throw a screen printing press on there. And you know what? Can we toss in a heat press? And all of a sudden, they are buried with this equipment investment expense. And frankly, you just can't learn it all at one time. So be very thoughtful about the expense you put out in the business on equipment, on inventory, on space when you're starting and trying to stay lean. Next is point number 3, and this is really important, is do the right things. And what does that mean? That means as a business owner or somebody that works closely in the business, that's why you're investing in the education here today. You want to make sure that you are contributing to things that are they're your skills that are beneficial to the business. And so that's going to basically make sure you're not tied up doing a lot of labor type items, direct labor type items that aren't producing the results. And so think about opportunity costs. What could you be doing if I had that transfer made for me, or if I had somebody print that for me, et cetera? That's something to think about when you're talking about profit. Don't tie up your time with tasks that don't drive the number and the strategy of the business forward. Next, pay yourself to replace yourself. I mentioned that earlier, and have nimble as a strategy, right? And so nimble is a popular word right now. Lean is a popular word right now, but we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's been an important business concept. You just want to be able to turn on a dime if something changes. So don't attach yourself to long commitments, long payments, high interest rates. If you can avoid it, long leases, you'll be stuck, right? We want a way to stay nimble as a strategy. So negotiate that in up front. Don't get buried by those expenses long term. All right, so that's calculating costs. Now, before I move off of that point and go into setting selling prices, I'm going to go ahead and pull up a little tool. And again, this is in the file section. So Vicki, if you can just confirm that the files I thought I uploaded there are actually there in the file section, that would be helpful.
They are there.
All right, thank you. So you can download this Excel grid as well as a PDF of my presentation right there if you want it. It's just a tab system. So right when you're in chat, you'll see polls beside the chat button and files beside that. You can click right there and get in. This is what I call the ultimate heat transfer vinyl cost calculator. So I built this years ago and have kept it updated because this calculating cost was the #1 challenge for people certainly cutting heat transfer vinyl. So you can use this for anything, but it's specifically designed for heat transfer vinyl, and I'll show you why. So notice this, right? So step #1, guys, I'm going to walk you through it, is shop info. So enter your shop's overhead percentage. We just walked you through on how to calculate that. In case you forgot, you can download the presentation, but you can also hover here for help, and it'll walk you through right on the calculator. And so I'm using the 15% that we have earlier as the example. Next is average hourly rate paid to the heat press employee and to the weeding employee. You'll notice from very specific numbers that are pre-populated in this. And why? Because we did a survey out, and this is actually 2019, a survey out to everybody who downloaded this cost calculator sheet. And we asked them the question, what are you paying the person to heat press? What are you paying the person to weed? And these were the average rates that came back from the survey that was established. So you'll see that, but you can put in whatever your rates are. So complete step 1, save the workbook as your own. And then once you get into a specific job, you go to step 2. Okay. So step #2 is we're going to start working through a particular job. And so if I have, let's just say I have a single color design that's going on the front of a t-shirt. And I'll show you an example here in a second. That would be 1 cut design per garment, right? Or if you're just using a transfer, it's just 1 design, whether it's cut or a transfer, that's fine. How long does it take you to weed and mask each design? Obviously, if you're ordering a transfer, it'd be 0. But let's just say you're loading heat transfer vinyl, you're cutting it, you're weeding it, you're truly making it on your vinyl cutter from start to finish in your business. How long is it going to take? Somebody said longer than 2 minutes. So what do you want to put in? Let's say 5. Okay. If it's taking you more than 5 minutes to weed a design, we need to talk about some accessories or some better heat transfer vinyl. We can help set up a meeting with me. Next is average time to heat press each cut design. I do think 2 minutes is a fair amount of time to heat press each cut design. So if this were a 2-color design, I would probably be lower than 2 minutes because most of the time is in me loading and lining up that first layer and before I line up the second layer. Okay, but let's just say 2 minutes. Now cost of the blank garment. So in our example, it was $1.98. Let's use something different. Let's say we're using more of a premium blank and it costs us, you know, $5.50, $5.55. And then the total number of garments sold for this job. And so this will calculate a cost per piece, but if you want to say the total number of garments, that maybe I'm producing this for 24 shirts for a group, it'll pop open. So right away, you'll see a couple bonuses, right? You'll get a production time calculator that's going to take you 2 hours to weed that job and not quite an hour to heat press it for not quite 3 hours total. So you can plan your time and schedule your time or your employees. But then it's also going to calculate the cost. And here is where you'll enter the width and the height of the design. So if we're just doing, let's say, a men's full front or even a women's full front, we're at about 10, 11 inches wide. And then the height or the length of it, let's just say it's a, you know, more of a horizontal design and it's 5 inches. Okay, so 5 by 10 design, it's going to tell you how much material you need and 15-inch or 20-inch wide, depending on what you're ordering. So you can plan for that or make sure you have enough as you're quoting the job or if you need to order it. And then the real magic part is over here to the right, where it breaks down the cost for every heat transfer vinyl material that is sold by Stahls. So let's say you want to do this in our most popular material for t-shirts. It's Ultra Weed. If you're trying one heat transfer vinyl from us, order Ultra Weed, throw it in with whatever order you place at the show. I can see that that's going to cost me 66 cents in material, 44 cents in heat press labor, $1.11 in weeding and masking, $1.16 in overhead, and $5.55 in the garment. My total piece cost to make that per shirt is $8.93, with most of it being the blank. But see how overhead factors in there for my total job cost here. And so this will help you guys. It has all the materials. It even has print cut vinyls. You can use it for transfers. You can use it for any product you want. It's going to help you calculate costs quickly and accurately. So download the tool, use it. It's our gift for you. Thanks for being a fan of Stahls. Now, any questions on calculating costs? Because we're about halfway, and I do want to move into selling price. So let me quit sharing my screen just for a fast second, and let's take a look in. What kind of questions we got? We got some fire going. We're bringing the fire tonight. Okay, so good question. I love this question. Dundee asks, oh, lots of questions, so I'm losing it. How would you calculate artwork creation time? Either by using Transfer Express or research and create design, etc. Yeah, so there are these costs in a business, whether it's artwork creation or if you guys attended my selling online presentation earlier, website setup, they certainly have a cost element to it. And I think it's important to factor them in. And so in the case of like design services, if we want to say that generically, design services, whether it's graphic art, design services where you're designing in CAD-Works or Transfer Express or CorelDRAW or whatever it might be, or you're building a website over here specifically for a client, I think it's a good idea to calculate those as kind of some administrative fees and indirect, unless you can specifically tie them to an order, then it could be direct labor. But that's tough. Again, it's one of those things that sometimes you sink that cost and you never sell the job. And so you would never be able to capture it in direct labor to a particular job. So I think it's best bucketed over in that indirect labor category. And so you can get a holistic view of the time you're spending there, whether it results in a sale or not. Now, the trick is, how can I tie that to a sale, right? Every time. And so then you start to think about how maybe I charge people up front and credit them, et cetera. Depends on your business model. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. All right. Yeah, so many woulda, couldas. This will be helpful as I start my business in a new state. How often do we update the cost calculator? Basically, as we launch new materials. So this is the latest version right now. I do need to get it updated for soft foam, a new product we launched, but that's the only product missing that I know. And then the cost calculator sheet is right in the file section of right beside our chat button where you're chatting in right now. Yeah, and we're definitely going to explain the other tabs of the sheet here in a second as we go into the price grid builder. And yeah, Christian asked, can the sheet, so I'm going to go back to screen share again, can the sheet handle multiple layers of material? The answer is absolutely yes. So all you need to do, let's say that was a 2-color design instead of a 1-color design, Christian. All I would do is say, hey, now there's 2 cut designs in that garment. I have 2 layers out of my heat transfer vinyl, if that's the way I'm making it, right? And then it just asks me to average the amount to weed each cut design. So if design 1 is a heart and it takes me 30 seconds, but design 2 is Pennsylvania, I heart Pennsylvania, right? Design 2 may take me 2 minutes. I'm going to take 2 minutes plus 30 seconds, 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm going to average those together, and that's about 1minute, 15 seconds, right? So I'm going to type in 1.15, the average to weed and mask each design, the average to heat apply each design. You get the point. So yes, it can absolutely do layers. Just need to make sure you put 2 cut designs, and it's going to ask you to put your design dimensions for that second placement. And so if that was the example, I heart Pennsylvania, the heart's probably only going to be, I don't know, let's say 3 by 5. And then it'll calculate, it'll add, so you can have up to 5 layers or placement locations in this calculator from stock. You can also, all the data is coming from this yardage data, this cost data tab. And so if you want to change the average price per square foot for any given material, you can do that. This average is based off of every roll length we sell it in. It's an average of all those prices from 1 yard up to 50 yard, just to get you a ballpark average. But you can certainly populate that as well. Anything that's in yellow can be edited by you. Okay. And inbound shipping costs, I calculate as part of the material. So again, your average landed price per square foot for the material or the shirt should also include shipping, and it outlines that in this hover for help section. It also includes a 15% waste factor, because we know we'd love to reduce waste, but there are some square inches of material that go into the garbage. So it covers all that. All right, guys, I want to make sure I get through everything. So I'm going to move on to setting selling prices, and I'll come back to some questions at the end, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. And certainly bad pricing is something that leads to out of business. So this is a really important topic for us to cover. There are so many philosophies to how to approach this. And it's highly debated, but I'm going to give you what I do, what I believe, and I'm going to give you some examples why. I'd certainly encourage you to seek out a lot of resources on this. It's super important to have a strategy here and to test different things. And so the Keystone method is something that is pretty much universally known, has been tried and true. And I like a lot of things about the Keystone method. So let me outline how this works, but also I'm going to walk you through kind of what to watch out for if you choose to implement the Keystone method in your business, or a markup, building it in like that. So typically in the Keystone method, what we do is we take the cost that we just calculated, right? That was the $6.90 all in with overhead and everything. And we multiply that by 2 for wholesale or group order, or whatever you want to calculate that as in your business, whatever you want to call that. I call it a group order or a wholesale price if I'm selling a certain quantity or more. And so then I get my price of $13.80 wholesale is what I would sell that shirt for in that 50-piece run. Now, if somebody is buying one of those shirts, or maybe I'm selling that to a bar or a restaurant that's going to resell it retail, usually you take the wholesale cost and multiply that by 2 for retail. And so basically you're getting a multiple of 4 on your base cost from base cost to retail, and it's $27.60. Why is it so much higher? Well, I think that's really important that it's higher for retail, because there is the cost of sale is going to increase. Does that make sense? Like if you're trying to sell something to individual consumers, there's a lot of burden that goes into being able to do that effectively. And so when you're selling stuff at retail, you certainly don't even want to think about wholesale costs at retail markets. So if you're selling online in quantities of 1 of these items, you need to factor it in, because certainly there is going to be the cost to acquire that one customer one at a time is going to be higher than acquiring a business customer and selling in bulk orders. Okay, so that is the fundamentals of the Keystone method. Now, here, going to make you work a little bit. This is an actual job, guys, that I produced. I run a little side hustle here. I don't do much, but I do enough to stay up to date on the how-tos and the equipment and the products in a real life scenario. And so would you pay $138.04 for this backpack as a consumer? Obviously, I know you wouldn't pay that wholesale, but I made that backpack. If you look over in the right, just to go through that backpack, it's an Ogio backpack. It's from Sanmar. It has some super nice high-vis reflective on it. So that's actually a pink reflective heat transfer vinyl called high-vis reflective. You can see not only does it have the dance school's name on the pouch, but it has the child's name on the top of the bag, all pressed on my Hotronix autoclam behind me, cut on my Graphtec. This thing's beautiful. Kids walking out. It's going to reflect light back to the source when they're in the parking lot. Top line. But would you pay that? All right, I don't see many questions. So you guys know this is kind of rhetorical. I don't know anybody in the world that would pay $138.04 for that backpack. Now, there's always a market and there's always one customer willing to pay it, but can we get that at scale? I don't think so. And the reason I wanted to use this example is you can be extremely profitable on this job. And frankly, I was, but not using that keystone method. The keystone method is going to leave you overpriced in the market in certain scenarios, and it's also going to leave you short in other scenarios. So you need to approach setting selling prices with a common sense approach. It's not just a sausage grinder that you can feed every job through and outspits the result. And so let's look at what this actually took to create and what we actually sold it for. Okay. Yeah, I don't see Patagonia on it anywhere. Good comment, Kim. I love that. Certainly people will pay more for a brand. 138. There you go. All right. So 50 backpack job example. It's what I actually sold, about 58, and the job might have been a little more, a little less. The reflective design with my material and waste was $1.16. My actual backpack, and this is the style name on Sanmar, the Logan backpack, was $28. And that included the inbound freight to get the 50 of them into me. And my labor was about 5 minutes per bag to be able to decorate this. And so my labor was 85 cents. Okay. When I calculate that, you see my overhead's pretty big here. That's why it's important, guys, because my direct cost of material is high on this. It's a high-end item. I mean, it's a nice backpack. And so my overhead as a percentage of that total direct cost becomes higher, right? That's our 15% on that. So 450 multiplied by all these direct costs gives me my overhead. So my total cost to make that is $34.51. Now, the Keystone sample, if you're tracking down, wholesale would be $69. That retail that we just talked through that nobody would pay unless it said Patagonia was $138. But let's look what I actually sold it for. So I sold this, got a peek around my monitor, for $54 a bag. Okay, that was my cost to the dance school owner. And actually the dance school owner margined it up a little bit so they can make a little bit of profit, $5-10 off of every bag that was sold as well. Why? Because it's their brand and they have the connection with the consumer, and that's how we're able to sell them at scale. And so they generate a little bit of profit as well. And so for my time to do this job, I completed these 50 backpacks in 4 hours on my heat press, start to finish, and I made $974.50 in profit. So don't tell me the heat press is too expensive, guys. You can pay that heat press back, invest in the top heat press that you can afford right now with the accessories and the platens to be able to do profitable jobs like this. It's possible. It's just a question is, can you sell it? Like that literally is the question. Can you find the customers? Can you identify who the customer is, and can you sell it? So lots of profit to be made here. Let me show you one more example. This is a picture of, again, another job. This is myself, my wife, and my 11-year-old daughter. This is a little thing we did over the summer, actually helped a small business owner with this, where we did these Unite Together shirts. I support small businesses while we were in the middle of the COVID lockdown, trying to support small businesses in the community. See a little lamp post here, all designed, by the way, in Transfer Express's Easy View Designer. And you see a little Uniontown name, the town where I'm from, which is south of Pittsburgh. So shout out to my people from Pittsburgh there. And I decorated this with a goof-proof transfer, which is our top-selling transfer formula from Transfer Express. Wouldn't cut and weed all of these for sure. I would just order it. So would you pay $17.72 per shirt? Yeah. So you guys are typing it in. Yeah, I would pay that. And so you see a lot of yeses to that. But guess what? If I were using the Keystone method, $17.72 would be the retail cost that I arrived at for this shirt once everything is calculated. LaDonna, you hit the nail on the head. $20 easily. Depends on your area. Have to know your market. But in this particular example, I was able to sell it for $20. So let's go through the calculation. The goof-proof design with freight was $1.89 into my business to be able to create that design. Single color, white design, run-of-the-mill, very easy. T-shirt was $1.79 with freight in. This is a carded cotton value blank tee. The t-shirt wasn't the hero in this. It was just getting it done and getting it out the door at a decent price. Overhead was 58 cents because, again, my cost of materials are fairly low. Total cost $4.43. Wholesale, $8.86. Retail, $17.72. Ultimately, I was able to sell this for $20. So if I would have just used that Keystone method, even at the retail price, I would have lost $228. Not lost. I would have left $228 available dollars on the table for the overall success of this program. Multiply that by one job like this a month over the course of 12 months. And we're starting to talk about some real money that we don't want to miss out on in our business. And so setting selling prices is critical, and the Keystone method can inform your decision, but I'd like to say, give you the way that I approach pricing to the market next. So again, $1,557 in profit in less than 2 hours. Guys, this is good business. Steve, good comment. I need to learn how to sell. One of the most valuable things you can do in your business is learn how to market and learn how to sell. We can give you a little bit of that. We can teach you how to print for sure, but selling is definitely, I wish it should be a college curriculum, I think. I've studied it a lot, but selling is an important part of the process. And so I'll give you some tips on that here as well. So this is it, guys. Before I go, what would have been the cost of that in HTV? I'm going to say that's a 10 by 12 design, so 120 square inches. Would have probably cost me about $1.20, $1.35 in material costs, so less expensive than Goofproof on paper, but where you're going to get murdered on this job is weeding costs. How long do you think it would take you to cut and weed all of those? More than 5 minutes of design, that's for sure. It's a lot of text, a lot of individual pickouts, some small detail, etc. So lots of management there. So certainly that would have inflated not only my labor element, but the overhead that was applied to the order. Screen printed transfers are a no-brainer once you start to approach, I would even say 48 pieces of the same design, sometimes even 24, depending on that factor of opportunity cost in your business and where you want to spend your time. I don't want to spend my time weeding, guys. It is fun at sometimes, but ultimately I know I can be more effective if I'm spending my limited hours selling and lining up business. I just want to lock that heat press down and collect the money. But that's up to you for your business. So genius, right? You guys are going to say, brilliant. Remember the old Guinness commercials? The best price maximizes profit. Like, yeah, who didn't know that? But this is important, and you can't miss it. It seems so obvious. People say what the market will bear. I like this statement better. The best price maximizes profit. And that's based on your particular customer, not the overall market. What you charge in Louisiana or California versus Pennsylvania isn't entirely relevant. In an e-commerce world, maybe you have to be in the ball game. But when we're talking business to business, we have to know our customer and what they're willing to pay. I'll tell you this, people are willing to pay more than you think if you present value. Price only becomes an objection where you haven't done a completely effective job of presenting the value of the product. Obviously, we can't be astronomically inflated, but if we're in the ball game and we've hit the mark on the value we're presenting, that's the garment, the design, the feel, the style, the way we've talked about, the way we've matched it to what the client wants or what they aspire to be, we can start to charge some higher prices. So do this. Here's what I want you to do. Okay. Set a minimum profit per piece in your business. I believe in this wholeheartedly, and here's why. Some people that I've coached over the years have a variable rate, but it takes the same amount of time to press one t-shirt, basically, I mean, we're talking maybe a minute difference to press a high-end jacket or the backpack. Now, when we get more complex with location and don't have the right tools for the job, yes, you can add a lot of time and regret taking a job if you don't have the right tools. But if you have the right tools, the right heat press, the right platen, threadability, everything we've been teaching you today, and we will throughout this event and forever, it basically takes the same amount of time, minutes, to be able to decorate an item with a single design location. And so I think there is a finite number on how much time you have at this stage in your business, if you're a beginner, that you can afford to spend at the heat press. And I want to make sure I'm maximizing that time. You don't want to be burnt out from pressing, 20-hour shifts. You want to maximize your time when you're there. It's limited, right? And so why? Hours per day are fixed. So if you can do one item every 2 minutes, I can do 30 items per hour. How much do I want to make? Not personally, but back to the business per hour. And that can start to get you to that profit per piece that you want to generate in your business. What that'll do is it will give you a filter with which to process every customer and every job through. And all of a sudden, some customers won't be worth your time. And I know that's harsh, right? We want every sale we can possibly get, but you will find that certain customers aren't worth your time because they want the down and dirty price, and my efforts could be spent elsewhere. And I'd highly encourage you to have this profit per piece rule and focus on it in your business. It's a great thought process approach to the market. You want to make money, right? That's what you're in business. Somebody asks you for a friends and family discount, I say charge them more because they're definitely going to buy for you because you're their friend or their family. All right. Anyways, do this. Always adjust higher if you're able. So you can run it through that keystone method. It's a good way to get like a gut check. What do we want to be at ballpark? What would most people approach this job through? So what I would do, I would take that shirt, that t-shirt that I did, and we knew it cost me, sorry, I'm going to backtrack a couple slides. So it cost me $443. Okay. So if I would have taken my rule of a minimum profit per piece of $5 in my business, I would have been comfortable selling that at $943. I would never charge that price because the customer will be willing to pay so much more because of how this product is created, what it represents, what's presented. Okay. And you remember, even running that retail keystone method, because we did list this product for sale on a online web store through Spirit Sale, I was able to sell this garment for 20 bucks. Okay. So you always want to have an idea of your customer, adjust the price higher. Obviously, you don't want to gouge them. Next, I love this one because this will handle the majority of price objections. So when I talk to customers, they say the number one issue in their business is price objections, right? Oh, we get so much price pressure. I can't sell for those prices in my area. I just can't do it. You don't understand, Josh. And I'd say you're not presenting the value. And then I'm going to give you this good, better, best scenario. So best practice, any industry, any studying you do, you're going to find that when we present products, we want to present no more than 3. Hey guys, you know what session we added tomorrow for you guys to attend? A heat press comparison. We're just adding it to the schedule tonight. You know how many products you're going to see in that presentation? 3. You're going to see the A to Z, the autoclam, and the fusion. The same holds true for your t-shirt business. You have people that are considering doing business with you. You find those, you generate a lead. When you go to presenting a good, better, best scenario is great. And what I mean by that is we can show a basic tee, we can show a performance tee, we can show a tri-blend, right? And you can figure out how you want to position them. We can show a basic tee, and you know what? We can do one with a basic treatment, just a white design. Then I can upgrade it and show them a glitter option, or you know what? I can do this pink reflective option for you, right? So you can play with how that's presented and what that means to you in your structure and scale of your products and your decoration offerings. But I love good, better, best. And what that does is a customer that comes to you and asks for a quote, you're always supposed to try to get a budget. Nobody ever wants to share it, right? We've all shopped for cars and we know that's the trick question. But if you have a like, no trust relationship with a customer and you've gotten to that trust point, they know you're not going to gouge them. Figure out what's their budget on this branded apparel, on this job, on what they're trying to accomplish. And I usually set that squarely at the better stage of the quote, right in the middle. Okay, here's what you asked for. This meets your budget, or here's what I think meets your budget. I'm going to place that right in the middle, and that's going to be right on target. So I don't get the price pressure. I'm going to create a good option that's similar, but that costs me less to produce. Okay, so if I'll just give you an example. If I'm doing direct embroidery left chest logos, I'm going to put embroidery right at the better option. Maybe I'll do a heat transfer vinyl version at good because it's cheaper and quicker for me to produce. And so if somebody wants a price concession, I'll say, but here, we have this option for you. This will service your need. It'll give you a logo, it'll give you the quality result in here. And then I can be confident that I'm not discounting my profit. That's never what I want to do. And then I love the best category because you just don't know. Have you ever wanted something, right? And you just see something and you have to have it, right? Anybody that's ever shopped for anything knows you get out there, and if you have a little bit of a budget that can fluctuate, somehow you find a way. And so being able to show this best option that's not too far away from what they asked for, but that's just a little elevated. If you do that right, you'll find that you're generating more revenue in your business. And if you've priced it right, you'll find you're generating more profit. So why? 3 shots are better than 1. My mom and dad always told me you'll never make a shot that you don't take, right? We've heard that from Michael Jordan or somebody. And so the same thing, you got to take multiple shots here, but never more than 3 because then it just becomes confusing. This prevents price pressure, allows somebody to upgrade. It shows a high level of preparation on your part if you present it right, not confusing, that you care. So build your quote form out like this. And it's a best practice for selection. We're not going to confuse people by the amount of choices. We're going to give them a very simple presentation, one that hits the mark, one that allows them to go up. If they want a price discount, here you go. I can give you this less expensive option. All right, so hopefully you're digging this. Yeah, win-win business scenario, I hear you. So my 5 keys to pricing. Don't discount. I know, that'll be highly debated. But once you establish a policy of discounting, or a practice, I should say, of discounting, it becomes habitual. And what you'll find is that you train customers to always ask for pricing. If you discount at certain places, you'll train customers to shop at those places, and they'll hold their money from you until they can get that discount because they know it's coming. If you ever are going to discount, if you're more in a retail environment with promo codes, certainly is a great way to incentivize sales. We do discount at Stahls, guys. So, but you just want to be very calculated and careful, and you want to have hard locked rules, and definitely don't discount because of an objection on something. Give them a lesser option that meets their budget for sure. We want to do that. Don't discount the quality of your work. That's a fast track to lower profitability, and it will hurt your business in the long haul. Next, this is a sales tip, guys. You want sales tips? Say the price is, right? A lot, what I find, and I've managed salespeople for the last 10 years at least, and studied a lot, is when we deliver pricing, and we're talking to a customer, we tend to place our insecurities upon the people that we talk to. And I find that's consistent across any industry with salespeople in general. And so if you're not comfortable charging that price, you're gonna hem and haw when you're delivering the pricing, and instantly you're gonna open the door for a price concession. Deliver the price confidently. The price for that is this. Also, if you can keep that pricing simple and deliver an all-in price that they can understand, better to do it that way. Decoration included, the price is this. If you can have a grid, I like keeping that grid behind the scenes and not publishing it on the website, but you can approach that anyway. But having a grid so you can refer back quickly and say, okay, here's my price for full front with the average of these materials. Good, here's my markup. I do all that work in advance, and that way I'm quick quoting, right? If you can give the price quickly and confidently, then all of a sudden you'll get a lot more yeses, or at least you'll understand the true objection. Okay, so hopefully you guys can understand that. I'll give you one more sales tip since we have a few extra minutes before I go into questions. Never solve an objection until you get to a single objection. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. Never solve an objection until you get to a single objection. What you'll find is that most customers will object, and you'll solve the objection right away. And then all of a sudden there's another issue, solve it. There's another issue, solve it. Okay. What you want to do is get to the final objection. That means how quickly can I get to the last thing that's going to get a customer to move forward with the deal? And so when somebody asks a question to you that's an objection or something like that on moving forward, the price is too expensive. Okay. What you should say before you say, well, I'll discount it, or try to justify your price, say, if we can overcome the issue on price, is that something then that we can move forward with today? Right? So you see how I did that? I reversed the question back. And so if you're having a conversation, this is easy. In an online world, it's a little more difficult, but a lot of times you're negotiating the price of items in that online world up front. Make sure you attach it, create value, get down to a singular objection. And then if there is a true price objection, what you can do is be able to present this good, better, best scenario and hopefully be able to solve it with a more budget item. Say, we can solve that, and here is how. Okay, so that was a lot of content in a short amount of time. Calculating costs, setting selling prices. I am going to show you the grid one more time. I just want a second to pull it up, and then I'm going to take some questions. I know I can run 10 minutes over, so I'm going to take it all. On this Excel grid that I gave you that was the cost calculator, let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. If I can figure out how to do that. There we go. All right, so it also has a price grid builder, and so we give you this idea of different quantity breaks. And again, these are all editable, so you can build it for your business, but you can enter a desired markup at each quantity. So at 1 to 11, you can see I'm considering that almost retail in my 400%, 350%. And then I'm building breaks across the grid and giving my sort of normal keystone price at that 49 to 100. Again, this is to inform you. This isn't something I would put out front because I think you're going to overprice or cut yourself short, but just an idea to get started. At that point, you can put in like some product names that you sell, and you can enter the decorated cost per item to make whatever it is, and you can name all these products. Here's where we have art. So any surcharges, whether it's art or website setup, you can pass that through. And what this will do after you complete all that info, it will carry over the product name, and it will automatically calculate the pricing for that particular job. So if you're quoting a customer on 3 different items, you can put, good t-shirt. Obviously, these are generic. Better t-shirt, best t-shirts. You can build out that good, better, best right within the grid. We can get rid of item 4 if we don't want to show it. And then after you build those out, I can see the quote across all of them. I can snip this out, put it into a quote document, attach some nice visuals to it, and send it out in an email, create a PDF, whatever I want to do. So just an extra tool that's on there. It's kind of new. The price grid builder, something new I was sharing. You guys experiment with it and give me your feedback. All right, that was a lot. Need a drink of water. I'm gonna take some questions. Vicky, did you see any that I should definitely get to live on air? I'd like to get to all of them, but I know we can't.
Shauna actually did a pretty awesome job at answering a lot of the questions that were backlogged. The one biggie is, once this is updated, how are we going to provide this to everyone?
Yeah, so you guys are in our database now for emails as far as signing up for this event. And so we send out emails from Stahls. Gosh, it seems like we send out one a week at least to different segments, depending on your business type, et cetera. And so when we update the cost calculator, we usually do an email out. But even better than that, if you haven't heard of this yet, right now, if you're on Facebook, search the Heat Press for Profit group. So this event's called Heat Press for Profit Live. We have a fantastic community of apparel decorators in the Heat Press for Profit group sponsored by Stahls. Join that group. Make sure you answer the questions or we won't let you in, because we try to guard that and keep that a community of apparel decorators, not just anybody that just wants to do it for fun or crafting. It's for profit for businesses. And so if you're a part of that group, I go live into that group a lot. We share a lot of content there, and I certainly share updates to this calculator in that group. Any other questions coming in? Yeah, so lots of good comments on the group. Thank you guys. All right, so I see Ronnie asks, I've turned down so many jobs this past year due to cost profit. I just can't compete to similar companies who can print orders of shirts for next to nothing. Any suggestions for new printing companies when faced with this dilemma? You know, I would probably go back to the very start, Ronnie. Usually, if you're not competing in a market and you're getting undercut, I would ask if it's a market you've set up to compete in. I always say a good strategy is start with the customer, and it's very important that you have a target customer that you're going after. The more specific the target, the better you will be with crafting unique value that appeals to them, and the less competition you will have. It's a tough read, but I read a great book many years ago, and it was called Blue Ocean Strategy. I don't know if anybody's read that. There's actually a second edition of it now. But Blue Ocean Strategy, the whole premise was, how can we create uncontested market space? So you have all the sharks competing over the same business, they're fighting, and there's blood in the ocean. That's the red ocean. What you want to find is a strategy that allows you to have this blue ocean where you have limited competition, because you don't want to be getting into price wars. And so that book walks you through how to do that. I've really found that book valuable. I would recommend picking that one up, and I think that'll help guide you to potentially some markets that can be a little more lucrative to you, and also it'll hopefully help you reinforce your value proposition so people are willing to pay those prices. All right.
You have another good one, Josh.
Yeah, send it to me. What you got?
Would you use the good, better, best method for a t-shirt that you might use embroidery on one, HTV on another, and goof proof on the other as an example?
You could. So just to recap, embroidery, heat transfer vinyl, goof proof. The only reason I hesitate is I'm not sure which one you would put in each category. You want to make sure there's some clear delineation between the two. For me, heat transfer vinyl, if it were a special effect, maybe that could be an upgrade over a flat screen printed transfer finish. But if it's just flat heat transfer vinyl, flat screen printed transfer, to me, you really shouldn't get that specific with the customer. I don't think they'll care. They just want their logo on a shirt and want to know it's durable and that it'll last. So I think you're on your way to that, but maybe what I would do instead is vary the blank more so than the decoration. I think you'll find that as long as you can get the logo on there accurately, unless it's a very compelling special effect, customers are usually more particular about the blank and the fit of the blank. And so I would probably vary the blank from a cheap cotton tee to maybe a ring spun being something in the middle. And then the high end, you can go tri-blend or performance tee, or maybe upgrade the finish on the ring spun from a basic to a special effect or something like that. Or, you can even add an extra branding location, guys. It doesn't have to be. And that's one of the best things. Like, I have a transfer here, so I'll show you. there is free ride along space on these sheets, right? So usually you're going to pay for your design or your 2 designs. Almost always you can fit a small logo on this transfer sheet when you order it. So you can use that space in your quotes, plan for it, and add a location on the neckline or the back yoke or on the cuff or something like that, and position that. Take you a couple more minutes at the press, if that, and it's already sunk into your manufacturing costs, either on the heat transfer vinyl waste or the transfer sheet. All right, hey, not bad for a 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. session. What do you think, Vicki? All right, she's silent. She's coming.
I'm impressed.
All right. So I appreciate everybody turning out for this and such great numbers, guys. We had a great day. If any of you have ever been to a trade show, I'm a big fan of the connection. I think that's one of the main things you get there. Connecting through a screen can be difficult, but hopefully you're feeling through the screen from our presenters over the course of today that we really do care about your business, and our company is built in such a way to where we will invest into making you successful, and we just know you'll buy the product. It comes as a result of us investing in you and making you successful. If you can find purpose in your business like that relates to your client, where you can make it about them and not about you, I think a lot of the price pressure will dissipate, and I think you'll be more successful overall. So that's my parting thought for tonight. I can't wait to kick it off with you guys tomorrow morning. I'm bright and early, 10 a.m. Eastern time, where I'm going to be doing a session called Confused About All the Options in T-shirt Printing. Start here, and I'll walk you through DTG versus screen printing versus embroidery. And I can't wait, we'll actually get hands-on in my new studio on my heat press, on my new counter caddy with my new counter, and we're going to do some action. We're going to press some stuff together. Make sure you join in early, and if you're up late, you're West Coaster, watch some of the recorded session. Everything is recorded and now up in our session. So thanks so much, guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow.